Today we're talking with Mary Pat Knight. Mary Pat is a coach, author, facilitator, and speaker. Mary Pat helps clients become transformational leaders while developing an emotional intelligence mindset. I am your host, Zachary Alexander, subscription service designer at subscriptionmaker.net. Please hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast so that you won't miss any new episodes. The reason we're talking with Mary Pat is that what we think of as leadership or the leadership game is changing. Leadership is becoming like coaching. It's about helping employees, colleagues, and teams maximize their talents and strengths. So we're talking with a 30-year expert, Mary Pat. Welcome to the Subscription Maker podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to start a little off topic, so bear with me, please. What was it like to be the granddaughter of immigrants?
What a great question. All four of my grandparents immigrated from Ireland to the U.S. in the early 20s, 1920s, early 20s. Here's what it was like for me. The sense of community, of pride of history, of knowing that I have four people in my lineage who really took a big risk in their life. I mean, talk about creating a huge change in their life, that they were decision makers. They made a decision. They went with the decision. Here's what the fun and the joy and the clan and the music and all of the family was really important to me. But there's two real key takeaways for me. One is the promise of what America offers it's been in my blood forever. The promise of what America offers to immigrants, from the 1800s and early 1920s to today. And then also the whole notion is that you can be or do anything that you want as long as you make a decision and do a little hard work around it.
How are you passing those values that you've learned from your parents and your grandparents onto your children?
Well, I made a decision when my children were younger to separate from their father. So I made a decision and did the hard work of being a single parent. So I had that momentum from my grandparents behind me. You can be or do anything you want if you make a decision and do the hard work. But here's what's happened with my children. What I think really got instilled in them is this: you can be or do anything that you want with a little hard work. So they are all three artists in their own right. So I have three kids who are artists, and they're really out there making their own way. They're kind of like their own immigrants at this point. They're all millennials, and they're all out there making their own way. I'm not giving a whole lot of advice. They are independent decision makers, and each of them is living a very unique life right now.
Full disclosure, I started the Subscription Maker podcast to help millennials prepare for the future, which will be very different from their baby boomer parents.
Mm-hmm.
I soon discovered that baby boomers probably needed the information more. So here we are.
I'm a boomer, so I get it.
Would you tell us a little bit about your company, Leaders
Sure.
Inspired?
Yeah. Leaders Inspired, we work with CEOs and their teams to create emotionally intelligent leaders. That at the baseline, that's what we do. We want leaders and teams who actually get results in their business, but from a human connection. So let me ask you, have you ever felt frustrated with human issues that are just coming at you? Have you ever felt frustrated like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So you might be the CEO who calls me and who says, they're not communicating. I can't get my teams to be accountable. I don't know, I'm frustrated with myself. Maybe I'm not the leader that they need. That's when we're called in. And so the signature system that we've developed over time really creates a transformative experience for the teams so that they can actually communicate, connect, be accountable, and finally get results. Everyone's happy. There's more joy in the business, higher levels of engagement. And I've never seen a team or an individual not transform the entire time that I've been doing this.
So what size companies do you work with?
I like the small to mid-sized companies. I like the entrepreneur who's shifting from an entrepreneurial mindset to a CEO mindset. There's a lot. That's rich with opportunity for higher level emotional intelligence, human connection, teamwork. So it's rich. So I would say the small to mid-sized companies are my sweet spot.
How long have you been in business?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur since the beginning, so 35 years. However, I've had an interesting journey in and out of corporate America. So I've been an entrepreneur, an executive, an entrepreneur, an executive, an entrepreneur, an executive. But let's just say maybe 30 years.
Okay. What kind of services do you offer?
Well, we have a signature system around developing emotionally intelligent leaders. So we take them through a process. There's 4 parts of the system. We offer that to teams, corporate teams. So we like to go in and we work over time with the corporate teams, and it's a series of skills that are built over time to develop this muscle in them. We also offer individual one-to-one coaching and organizational coaching, and we've got an online component as well. So we've got online education that you can do it yourself, e-learning.
Okay, I want to go a little deeper on that.
Yeah.
What does emotional intelligence mean to you?
Well, let me break it down really simply because there's a lot of fluffery out there. So the very simple definition of it, and there's more richness that you can delve into, but if you just wanted a top line and how it would be useful to you, when you are navigating the world, there's 2 concurrent lanes that you're navigating, the self and the other. So it implies humans are built to have relationships, yes?
Absolutely.
So, and that also, in effect goes into corporations. You're built to have relationships. So in the lane of the self, I have to understand that as a human being, I have emotions. And so what's interesting about that, having emotions, there's a lot of judgments about emotions. There's no crying in baseball, the famous saying from the movie A League of Their Own. There's the judgment that, you don't bring your emotions into the workplace. And it's foolish, actually, because you're a human being and you have emotions. So the first part of emotional intelligence is to recognize that I have emotions, not judge them, but name them, understand what they are. And then I can go to the next part of that lane, which is when I know what they are and can name them, I can then make choices and manage how I express them. So the other side of the coin is that if I have emotions, doesn't it make sense that you have them too? So as the other
Absolutely.
person, you have emotions. I'm likely to have judgments about your emotions. It's my job to figure out my own judgments and not bring them in to the conversation. But you have emotions, and it's okay. I can't control your emotions, so I can't go down and manage your emotions. But what I can do is completely invest in the relationship. And that's all the rest of the skill building: listening, feedback, having the tough conversations, telling the truth, building accountability systems, all goes into that bottom part. Building resilience, all of the characteristics of emotional intelligence really goes into that bottom right part of the matrix I'm talking about, which is managing the relationship. So I have emotions. I need to know how to manage them. You have emotions. I need to contribute to the relationship. And along the way, the middle sector is compassion, which means I may not know why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. I may not know why you're feeling what you're feeling, but I'm going to hold a space for us to have a productive outcome. Does that make a lot of language, but does that make sense? It's kind of a simple explanation.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do you provide any subscription services?
I don't yet.
I
But,
like
so
that yet.
I'll be following your podcast for a while. I actually plan in 2021 to offer a membership service. Mhm.
Okay. How do you compete with larger, more established companies?
Ooh, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. And let me just clarify that. I don't compete per se. The larger companies really have the advantage of data and research that I actually can learn from, and I'm really eager to learn from the data and the research that's coming out, especially around neuroplasticity and some of the brain functions that contribute to high EQ. But I don't necessarily compete. I do work with larger companies, but I don't really worry about the big guys because my philosophy is that whatever tribe we're meant to work with, by the very nature of being out doing the work that we're doing, talking to the people that we need to talk to, we'll attract those people.
Okay. I find a lot of freelancers and contingent professionals want to start their businesses by Googling the largest company in the area and setting up a sales call.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Would you talk a little bit about the challenges of working with large companies and how you get their attention?
Yeah. Now I want to also go back to your previous statement, because I think it's smart of you to see that and call that out, because Googling a very large company might give you a target many, many years out. But if you're first starting out, probably would behoove you to find out what your potential clients need and want before you start comparing yourself to the big guys. Because then I think that comparing yourself to the big guys creates that imposter syndrome that's pretty popular right now.
Right.
So
But
you know you
actually,
have something. Go ahead.
what I was thinking about is, in our area, we have the federal government
Hmm.
and we have large agencies. So the first thing someone does is they think, well, I'm just going to go offer my coaching services to a CEO at Boeing. I'm going to offer it to someone, the biggest, it's the largest company in the area. That's who they want to work with,
Yeah.
versus let's work with someone small. So I was just curious about that situation, because
Yeah.
you work with large companies before.
I do. So usually, what are the challenges of working with them? So, one of the challenges, I think, and it's a state agency that I'm thinking of that I had worked with, is that the bureaucracy and the decision making is cumbersome because of the bureaucracy. So for you to actually execute a contract with a large agency like that, or a large company like that, could take you a year to get
Absolutely.
through the hoops. So if you're a small business starting out and you put all your eggs in that basket, boy, that would be really hard to be able to live without bread on the table for a while. So, and also the challenge is that there's a very slow turning wheel. So if you are a new person, you're more nimble. You want to get things done faster, and their training and or coaching or consulting needs are super formal. Like, you've got to have all your ducks in a row. You've got to be able to state the outcomes. You've got to perform to those outcomes. There's no variation. So I think, I think that's why I prefer the smaller companies, because they're more nimble. But, so for a freelancer or a new person starting a business to say, I want to work with Boeing, my advice would be hook yourself up with a company who's already working with Boeing and freelance for them.
Right.
Then you're in the door.
Would you tell us about the challenges of working with small and mid-sized companies, and how do you get their attention?
Yeah, this is my sweet spot. So the quick decision making happens here, but the outcomes might be cloudy. So the
Okay.
person who's calling and saying, I need you, might be not so clear about what the outcome is that he or she is looking for, or they are looking for. Another challenge, I think, is budget. So, obviously the larger companies will have budget, but some of the smaller companies don't. And the other challenge is there are sincere growing pains in this small to mid-size, sincere growing pains. And one of the most is the owner, entrepreneur, who needs to shift from owner, entrepreneur to CEO.
Right.
And I think I've got particular skill here, because I have a 30-year career, and I've had leadership in all levels of corporate along the way. So I get what needs to happen along the way. And I think the other, which I love, but the other potential pitfall is that there's homegrown talent in some of these smaller companies. So, like, if you've been a legacy manager for a while, but you don't have the skill set, do you acquire the skill set, or are you asked to leave? And that's heartbreaking sometimes.
How do you get their attention?
Thought leadership.
Okay.
Thought leadership. So think about what you're doing right now, podcasting, how you're podcasting. This is thought leadership. So how do you establish yourself as a thought leader? Thank God for LinkedIn, huh? So you establish yourself as a thought leader, networking conversations that are deep conversations, not top line conversations. And I actually get a lot of the attention of these businesses through referrals.
Okay. Have you ever had to pivot one of your businesses?
I think when we were first talking prior to you inviting me to be on your podcast, I said I was the queen of pivots.
Okay.
I'm wired to take risks.
Right.
So I am okay changing on a dime.
Yeah.
And I have many times changed on a dime, because I've been
This seemed right.
Yeah, it seemed right. Yeah. So I think one of the pivots that has been very advantageous to me are the times, and there's been a handful of them, where I have pivoted in and out of corporate America.
Okay.
So I've had my entrepreneurial adventure, and I was doing my business and doing my consulting and coaching, um, very first in the area of strategy and marketing. So that was my first business. And I pivoted myself back into a corporation where I began to understand human development. When I came out to my company, the new company was in the area of human development and training. I went back inside another company to learn executive skills. I was brought in as the chief operating officer of a food service company. And then I was, from there, went to senior vice president of human resources for a very large hotel company. So that allowed me to have more of the executive experience. So it was very advantageous to pivot there. And now I'm pivoted into this business, which I will do for the rest of my life. But a current pivot has been really interesting to me. At the beginning of the year, I don't know why, but it was an organic pivot away from the team training, the team facilitation that I was doing, to one-on-one executive coaching.
Okay.
So I really think somebody up there was looking out for me, because that's all virtualized. I don't have any issues around that. One-to-one coaching happens one-to-one on the telephone or by Zoom, not in person. And we're talking right now in this podcast, during the time of the pandemic, and that pivot has been really advantageous for me.
What was the best advice you received before pivoting?
I think I can remember a coach saying to me, time will reveal all things. And make your decision and course correct along the way. And so interesting, kind of brings me back to the first question you had about my grandparents immigrating to the US, is that time reveals all things. They made a decision and they had to course correct all along the way, with confidence that it all works out in the end. It's all happening for my greatest good. So I think that, it's interesting. Time reveals all things. Make your decision and course correct along the way. And I can hear my coach saying that in my head right now.
I actually want to go a little deeper on that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a coach.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've found with in talking to people and talking to entrepreneurs and thought leaders on my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
is that so few of them use coaches.
Mm.
I asked that question, I ask a question, who do you talk to? And they don't talk to anyone. They don't tell me about a coach. Now they'll get a coach for speaking. They'll get a coach for presentation, but to actually talk to someone about their business. I ask about, well, how do are you thinking about starting a subscription service? And they say, yes, I'm talking to my team. And I'm going, well, you think you're going to get the best information from your team? I mean, your team can be helpful,
Yeah.
but it's possible that you may want to go to a coach and talk to someone who doesn't have a vested interest in whether or not you make a decision and the decision you make. Because there's a lag time between, there's a revenue shift, I guess you would say. When you start out with a subscription service, the revenue is going to go down. Mm-hmm. Because you're basically lengthening out the payment cycle. So instead of receiving all the money up front, it takes time to receive that money. So it's unconscionable that a salesperson is going to want to opt for a service which is going to reduce their commissions in the short term, versus saying, okay, I'm willing to stick with the company and deal with it long term. So I just find it odd that so many people don't take advantage of the opportunities to work with a coach.
Well, I want to just tag along on what you were just saying, is that you're talking about the long game. And that's what a business is. It's the long game. And you're going to have your ups and your downs. And like if you start a new service, revenue is likely to go down. That's, I think, where a coach can really, really help, because the coach keeps the vision and the perspective up. I mean, obviously, great knowledge can be imparted as well. But the coach is responsible for keeping your dream alive for you. And especially if you start to slump under. So, I mean, that's really important.
Let's shift gears a little bit. What do you mean by leadership mastery? What does that mean to you?
Well, obviously, I've named my program that. That's my signature program, is Leadership Mastery. And so what it means is that recognizing there's a series of systems that you must learn along the way. There's an emotional system, there's a communication system, there is a performance system, and there's a genius system. Those are all four of the systems of my program. You need to make a commitment to practicing the skills over time. Much like person who wants to become a world-class weightlifter, strength weightlifter, you cannot just say, boom, I'm an emotionally intelligent leader. You have to commit to practicing over time, which requires huge humility. So mastery and humility go hand in hand. Like, what do I not know? What do I need to know so that I can actually become a master of it? When you master leadership, then you become a mentor to others. So if you are coaching on leadership, you better have some mastery around leadership. If you're coaching on EQ, you better have some mastery around EQ, because you then impart your knowledge. So I think, to me, mastery does require humility, a commitment to learning and practicing, and course correcting along the way.
One of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to go a little deeper on that thought. I've heard you talk about listening and the importance of listening. Would you discuss that with us, or let us know what you think here?
Yeah, I think, to me, listening is the greatest of all the leadership and EQ skills, the greatest. Listening infers respect. It builds connection. It strengthens trust in relationship. And most of us do it really poorly. There's a concept that I teach in my program, is that there's a bunch of stuff to it, but in essence, it's we hear noise in order to talk, which is not listening. But that's what
Absolutely.
many people do, So listening is like love. I read somewhere early on, and I can't find the original research about this, so maybe it's something I made up in my mind. But I did read about a study once where they hooked somebody up to electronic nodes, and they were doing a study on them, an electronic study, and what they were able to ascertain is that a person who is deeply listened to fires the same neurons as a person who feels deeply loved. So I always say to my people, all right, I'm going to use the L word. Listening is love. That's what it is. It's a deep commitment to being curious, interested in the other person, obtaining the necessary information, and moving forward. I think the Vistage group, and I've stolen this and use it all the time, but Vistage, which is a peer networking group, peer level board group, uses the term love liberally, but it's LUV, which is, I'm going to listen, understand, and then validate your experience. And that's what true listening does.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about speaking, or your speaking career.
Okay.
How long have you been a professional speaker?
30 years. Okay. It's not primary, though. So here's what's interesting. I am called to speak. I speak almost every year in one way, shape, or form or another. It is not my primary career. But I have been speaking on topics, motivationally and business topics, for 30 years.
Has speaking helped your business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When if you think about it, do you speak? Do you speak professionally?
I don't. I'm more techie than speaker.
Okay, but you do listen professionally, so I wanted to make note of that. As a
Absolutely.
podcaster, you listen professionally. So my earlier stuff around listening should resonate for you, because you do it very well. You have to do it as part of your livelihood. My old granny used to say, "Still waters run deep." Yeah. So anyway, I kind of hijacked us back to listening. You were asking about speaking, growing my business. So anyway, authority. There's authority that happens. There's authority that happens with speaking and also authoring. Also, thought leadership on a social media platform. There's authority that happens. That you are the subject matter expert in this area, and you now have social proof because someone hired you to talk about it. So the entryway into a conversation about an engagement with a company is some of the initial barriers are completely eliminated because of your ability to speak.
I know you're a member of the National Speakers Association.
Mhm.
How has that journey been for you?
Well, here's the interesting thing. I'm a newer member.
Okay.
But here I had a kind of a little of a backdoor in. I wanted to study the book Think and Grow Rich. I
Okay.
wanted to have a study group around Think and Grow Rich. I had read it years ago, and I really wanted to. So there is a subset of the National Speakers Association, so an affinity group, and it's the Black NSA. And they, every year, twice a year, they do a study of Think and Grow Rich. So I asked, could I join you? And they're like, absolutely, all takers. So I'm going to do a little political aside, if you don't mind. Okay. I
Sure.
thought about this. I thought, here is a group. It's an affinity group. It's a Black affinity group. It's African American affinity group. I'm obviously Caucasian, and they said, come on in. And the warmth and the welcome and the learning and everything was just beyond anything I ever expected. And it got me to thinking about how many white-based groups would say, no, you don't have the right color skin, you're not welcome. And I was like, dang, this was such a beautiful eye-opener for me. So from there, so many of them love the National Speakers Association. And I said, I'm joining because I never want to be far from you guys as a group.
Yeah, I
So
have to agree with you on that.
Mhm.
And I also like to add to it by saying there are African Americans, right? People concentrate on the African, they miss the Americans.
you miss the American, yeah. Agreed. Now, my grandparents all came from Ireland. So am I Irish American? Partially. Am I all American? Absolutely, I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I got in. That was the back door. So I've enjoyed my experience thus far, and the NSA's got some incredible perks. They've got incredible speakers, incredible education. So I don't think I have fully taken advantage of it yet, but
That can take years.
it's going to take years. Yeah.
As we start to wrap up,
Mhm.
is there a question you wish more people would ask you?
Yeah, there is. The question I think I would like more people to ask is, what is my contribution here? We're so quick to blame other people or other entities for our problems and for the misunderstandings and for confusions and our past hurts. And I think if we all stopped, and this is a total EQ place to be, which is, how have I contributed to this confusion, this pain, this hurt? What's my contribution? When I know it, I can make a choice to change it.
Absolutely. Are you planning any new offerings post lockdown?
I am. I have, I'm a published author already. I published in an anthology, but I have my book coming out. The Heart of the Leader is going to
Okay.
be released. So I'm so excited about it. I've been working on it for a pretty long time. And it really is, it's a retelling of the signature system with some cool stories in it and the like. So that's either going to be November or January. So that's coming out. And then I talked with you also about the possible membership site. And then I have the online program, the Leadership Mastery System Online, and we're going to do version 2.0 because some of my teaching has matured and I'd like to be able to get some of that into the program.
So you have like an open invitation to come back when your book comes out, right?
Yay! I'd be delighted to.
What's the best way to keep in touch with you on social media?
So here's a couple ways. So LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. MP Knight is my first two initials and my last name with a K, MP Knight. You can find me on Facebook under Leaders Inspired Fan. That's my business page. But, you folks might want to take my EQ quiz. So go to emotionallysmartleader.com and take the quiz. And you can stay in touch with me that way.
Perfect. Mary Pat, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Subscription Maker podcast.
Totally my pleasure. It's been a delight to talk with you.
This is your host, Zachary Alexander, subscription service designer at subscriptionmaker.net. Please join us next time as we talk more about what it means to be a successful subscription maker.